Welcome to Quack&Co, the channel where every video is 10 minutes or less guaranteed. No take-backs. If we awkwardly go longer than 10 minutes, we will cut ourselves off mid-sentence and, pay the ultimate price, I suppose. Today we're talking about Final Girl, and we're going to be talking about the best and the worst features of Final Girl. Last night over on Quackalope, I stayed up playing about 7 or 8 episodes of this, diving in, recording many of them to go over on the channel, and really trying to dig into the gameplay, playing multiple scenarios, multiple Final Girls, and trying to figure out everything this game has to offer. And I gotta say, I'm really enjoying it. I enjoyed this back when it was a prototype that I was covering on the channel. I thought it was overwhelmingly thematic. The card play was fun and interesting. But now that we have the variations of modules and, of course, the lore and scenario book over here, man, this is just such a fantastic solo game for myself personally. So let me give you an overview of what Final Girl is, and then we'll dig into the best and the worst element of Final Girl, so you can make a decision if it's going to be the right game for you. Final Girl is going to be a modular solo experience where you're doing your best to manage your hand of cards, playing down cards to spend the resource of time and take actions across the board, but also moderate how much time you've spent, because that's how you buy up new cards to take actions later on or in the future in the game. Now, the way that your hand management actually ebbs and flows is that you're going to be playing cards, rolling dice to resolve successes and fails, paying whatever consequences you have or rewards for a success or a fail, and then these cards that you just played will be placed down into the reserve zone where you can't actually have access to them until a whole nother turn passes. So the cyclical nature of the game means that you'll be buying cards into your hand, playing cards at the start of your action, and then waiting for a cycle to get those cards back in. So if you utilized all of your movement, you spent all of your attacks in one big heavy swing, you might have a delay before you can actually utilize some of those abilities again. The game is super modular. It comes with a core box and then various different cassette scenarios that branch out. Each one comes with a different villain, 2 Final Girls, a different location, and a variety of different scenarios. Each location has its own set of items, cards, setup modules, and story elements, and each villain comes with their own set of terror cards that are conditional and thematic to whatever combination you're merging together. When you actually start playing the game, you'll take those stacks of decks and mix everything together, set up the board, leaving out piles of potential scenarios or alternative scenarios, so that every time you play, it'll actually be a similar but very unique and different experience, and then you'll start solving the puzzle. The main objective of Final Girl is to, survive and take down whatever villain you've chosen or whatever hunter you've chosen during the course of the game. The main objective for the game is to destroy you by ripping you limb from limb or stabbing you through the gut or whatever other gruesome ways they can come up to kill you. The game is going to escalate as you play, with every step that you take either helping or increasing the level of strife you have. The more horror there is on the game board, the less dice you roll. The more cards you've spent, the less you might have to purchase from the market. The more damage you've taken, the easier it might be to become the victim or fall victim to any of the different machinations here on the table. You'll be playing as one of a variety of different Final Girls, each with their own asymmetric rewards and special abilities that you unlock by saving victims from the main map here. And that's the main sequence of the game. It's an epic, highly modular solo experience that is deep in hand management, a little bit of resource management, and has an incredible thematic overture that really makes Final Girl stand out when it comes to kind of this genre and all of its competitors. That being said, let's talk about the best and the worst elements, and I think I want to start with the worst element of this game, which is a little bit difficult for me to narrow down and decide upon. I think, for myself, the worst element of Final Girl is going to be the introduction of a degree of randomness that can make the game at times feel slightly unfair. Now, I do find this randomness highly thematic, and I always find that it paints a great story. So if you're willing to play a game that might tear you limb from limb, or have horrific moments happen, but does at times feel like there was almost nothing you could do to account for that, then this one still might be right for you. But think through all of the different sort of open-ended variants you have, right? You have a random stack of item cards that you're drawing from that may or may not have items that are useful to you, depending on how you're utilizing them and how you're playing the game. You have a variable terror deck that could or could not have any type of escalating cards in it, both from the location and the villain, and those cards could come out and just slaughter everything around you. You have events that will potentially cause an immense amount of damage. For instance, things like fire, which has you rolling a die and determining exactly where everyone there is going to die. You have a little bit of randomness, or a significant amount of randomness, when it comes to the dice themselves. Every time you play a card, you're going to be rolling dice based off of your horror track. 3 for green, 2 for white, 1 for red. And honestly, these dice are not your friends. You have 2 blank sides on them. You have 2 sides that require you to discard 2 cards in order to utilize that action. And then you have 2 successes. And when you're rolling both, you're honestly looking for 2 successes on everything you can get, which almost never happens. And so you're stuck with this choice of, when do I feel like the game is working against me? How many bad dice rolls do I have to get in a row before I feel like this puzzle just wasn't fair? That's probably the worst part of the game. There can be some significant feel-bad moments when the randomness here on the table doesn't feel like it matches the degree of strategy the game's trying to present you with. Now, the best part of the game, for me, is going to entirely disregard the worst part of the game. This game is so immensely thematic, remarkably so. I love the actions that you get to take, the weapons, the items, the final girls that have their own special abilities, the locations with their flavor text and story, the creatures that you're fighting that have tarot cards that are named things like Hellish Pursuit, or We're All Going to Die, Better Lock the Door, Grab Your Crucifix, Did You Hear What Happened in Maple Lane, Slash Her, and Road Closed for Construction. This game is teeming with life, and every time I play it, I feel like I've just sat down and watched a, 80s horror flick, right? One of these kind of glitchy, but honestly remarkably comforting and refreshing horror films that dig into the subconscious and dig into why we love this genre of tabletop experience. It's a solo puzzle that I really genuinely could see myself playing this every single week for the next 6 months or the next year. I love the stories that it presents and just how crazy and modular every element of this is. I mean, I played 3 or 4 games off camera last night and then started opening up the lore book and ended up playing 3 more on camera just because I was enjoying the process of discovery. And I lost a lot of those. But man, does this game do an incredible job at painting a picture, telling a story, and having mechanics and effects and everything really build to that overall tale that it's telling. And sometimes you lose. I don't mind that. I don't mind the randomness that says you tripped while going down, or the construction site that closed the road that you needed to travel in, or the fire that blew up the village where you were going to get, or the house where you were going to get a shotgun. That's part of the story, and that's part of the narrative that, for me, I think Final Girl exudes. So, that's going to be my take. That is the best and the worst elements of Final Girl here on the table. I'm super excited about Season 2. I'm all in on Season 1 and cannot wait for the storage container and some of the modularity that they're presenting in the next season. I hope this is a genre of game we just don't see the end of. I want to see how they can open up this world and continue experimenting with this style of gameplay. And maybe, for those of you that really the randomness doesn't make it right for, Board Game Co., Alex was one of those. For those of you where the randomness is too much for you to enjoy the story or enjoy the narrative of the game, I hope they refine that puzzle throughout the course of play to give you a bit more control and maybe a bit more dice mitigation as you play. Either way, thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. This has been Quack&Co., the show where everything's 10 minutes or less, and I am rapidly approaching my exit point. So, with that, have a good one.